Hi, this is Vicki. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Crafting for Fun. Today I'm going to show you how I made this treat bag. We're going to be demonstrating the red angry bird. I also did the yellow bird and the pig, and I'll have some dimensions for how I cut the pieces to decorate the bags on my blog, craftingforfun.blogspot.com, but I won't go through that one on the demonstration today. I saw this idea on the internet, but there were no instructions for how to cut it other than the bag shape itself was created using the Fancy Favors die from Stampin' Up! This bag is about 3.5 inches tall. It's about 4 inches tall, it's about 3 inches wide, and it's about 2 inches deep. So fairly generous size party favor bag. Really simple to make, but I did not have the Fancy Favors die, so I set about trying to figure out how to create this project without the die. Really very easy to make. Very few supplies you'll need. Let me show you which paper supplies you'll need first. You will need a piece of red color cardstock to make the red angry bird. This piece measures 6 inches by 11 inches. You will also need scraps of yellow, black, white, and red, and those are just small scraps that are left over. I used quite a few punches to create my angry bird because I have several punches. First I used this, this is about a 2.5 to about a 2 3/4 inch circle punch. I just happen to have that, but you could easily make something similar by even tracing the bottom of a soup can. I have this flower shaped die. This is from Stampin' Up, but any similar shaped die would work. I used 2 smaller circle dies. I used a 1 inch and a 1/2 inch. Again, you could probably trace something like a 1/4 and then maybe just this is larger than like a standard hole punch, but you could try a standard hole punch or even drawing in the blacks of the eyes. I used a 1 inch square punch just because I happen to have that, but you could easily cut a 1 inch square on a paper cutter. And then I used this border punch. It's just from Martha Stewart, and I believe it's called the awning punch, but I'm not exactly certain about that. But again, you could experiment with different border punches that you have, and that's for the decorative detail along the top of the punch. You could try to experiment and use what you have in lieu of any of these punches. They just happen to be things that I had. So let me clear my desk off and I'll show you how we did this. So I'm back, and what I have set up here is my scoring tool. I happen to be using the Stampin' Up! Scoring tool, but any of the scoring tools would work fine. And this is my 6 inch wide by 11 inch long piece of red cardstock. I'm going to lay it so that the long side is at the top of my scoring tool, and I'm going to score at 1 inch. I'm going to score at 4 inches. I'm going to score at 6 inches. And 9 inches. Then I'm going to turn my paper, and I'm going to score at 1.5 inches along the long side of my paper. And this is all of the scoring that I'm going to do. So I'm going to remove my scoring tool, set that aside, and now I'm going to bring in some scissors. Now this is the end where I have my 1 inch score mark, and my 1.5 inch score mark is at the bottom. I'm going to cut off that small piece at the corner. It's a rectangular shaped piece, and I'm going to discard that. That's the only piece that we're going to be discarding. And then all along the bottom, I'm going to cut at every score line up to that 1.5 inch mark. And those are going to be the bottom tabs for my box. And that is actually all of the cutting that we're going to be doing on this box project. Very simple box project to make. The only other thing that you can do, and I'm going to bring back my scoring tool and just show you how this is an optional step. If you decide that you would, for ease of folding the sides of the bag, that you'd like to add some little score marks here on the sides of the bag, you can do this. I'll show you this step, but again, this is completely optional. At each of the 2 inch wide sections, so you've got 1 inch, then you've got a 3 inch wide, then a 2 inch wide, then a 3 inch wide, then a 2 inch wide. On every one of the 2 inch wide sections, that's at 5 inches and 10 inches, you could score a little mark, and I'm going down about 2.5 inches. And this, I am just eyeballing the length. It is not meant to be exact. Those will just make folding the side of your bag in a little bit easier, but that is absolutely not a necessary step. It's just one for convenience. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my bag over, and I'm actually going to fold in all of my little tabs so that I'm folding towards the raised side on my score marks. And this would be a good time to take out a bone folder and burnish all of your folds. Now for today's demonstration, I'm just going to use mono adhesive. You could certainly add sticky strip here to make your box or your bag a little bit stronger. So I'm adding a generous amount of adhesive on that 1-inch flap, which has been folded back. So this is the inside of my box. This is the outside. And I have my 1-inch flap folded back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the opposite side, this edge here, and I'm going to fold it over. And I'm going to line everything up. Oh, darn, I made a mistake. So before I go on, I'm going to open that back up. Before you add adhesive to this strip, I'm going to show you what you'll want to do. I'm going to turn this around so it's easier for me to work with. This section here is going to be the front of your bag. So you've got a 2-inch wide section, and then you've got the section that's 3 inches wide that's going to be the front of your bag. I'm going to take my border punch, and I'm going to center my design here in the middle of that section, just because I want it to be centered on my finished project. So I've got it centered up, and I'm going to go ahead and punch all along the top of my bag piece. This is where you want to take a little extra time and make sure you line things up properly. Now, you'll notice that I stopped here on this 1-inch piece. I could continue and go all the way down to the end, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my scissors, and starting at this score line on that 1-inch end, I'm going to cut down just a little bit so that that area there doesn't show up on my finished project, and you'll see what I mean. So now I'm back to where I was. I have my 1-inch tab that's already got adhesive applied, and again I would do this step after I punch the top. Then I'm going to go ahead and fold it over and press it down, and there I have my scalloped punch along the top, and my flaps are at the bottom. Now if you have any little stray pieces, you can just pick this off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my box over, and I'm going to fold the end flaps, the small end flaps in, and then I look at my box, and here is where the seam, where I created that, where I overlapped those two edges, this is the seam. I know I want that to be the back of my box because I like to have my seam on the back side of my box. So what I'm going to do is, this is the back. I'm going to fold the back flap in, and then I'm going to fold the front flap over. Since these flaps won't actually go all the way to the edge, that step is not terribly important, but it's just a habit that I've gotten into when I create boxes. I just try to be mindful of where the front, and then I'm going to fold put adhesive on, fold my flap over, and glue it in place. And now my favor bag is essentially completed. If you decided to use it for a different purpose, you could decorate it any way you want. These little marks on the side are just meant to show me where to kind of squeeze my bag in on the edge. So there we go. There's my bag. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to bring back those paper scraps because we're going to need to make the embellishments for the front of our card. So with my circle, and I did measure this. This is a 2.5-inch circle, by the way. And a larger, slightly smaller, I don't think it would make any difference. I'm going a little bit less than halfway into the punch with my paper, and I'm going to punch part of a circle. I'm going to set that aside. Then I'm going to bring back my 1-inch punch, and I'm going to use that, going to use that same white paper to punch 2 pieces for the eyeballs. Now I'm finished with the white paper. I'm going to bring in my 1/2-inch circle punch, and I'm going to punch 2 of those. Those are for the inside of the eyeball. Finished with my black paper now. I'm going to use my yellow paper, and I need a 1-inch square. And again, that could easily be cut with a paper cutter. I'm going to cut that. And I'm finished with that punch and that paper. And the only other thing I need is my red. And I don't actually need the whole flower. I just need about 3 petals on the flower. So I'm going down about 2/3 of the way on this punch. And I'm going to punch that. And then the only other thing I need in order to complete this is I need 2 pieces for the eyebrows. Now, what I have here is this is my scrap of black, and I just happen to know that this piece is 1 1/8 of an inch wide. And I'm going to need 2 1/4 inch pieces cut off of the end of it. You can do this by hand, or you can do it with a paper cutter. I'm going to go ahead and cut these by hand. If you're absolutely particular about them being uniform, you'll want to use your paper cutter, and that is all you'll need for embellishment. So I'm going to bring back my bag, and I'm going to begin by applying adhesive to the bottom portion of my flower. And I want to remember where my front and back of my bag, this is the back side of my bag and this is the front, and I'm going to apply my flower so that just slightly less than 3 petals are showing, and that's like the plume on the top of the bird's head. I'm going to take my part of my 2.5 inch circle. I'm going to apply adhesive on that. You're not going to believe how easy these are to put together. And I'm just going to center that along the bottom, making sure that I have about the same amount of on both sides. Believe it or not, this is a little bit more difficult to do on camera. There we go. Then I'm going to take my yellow piece, and this is where a bone folder would be really helpful, and I'm just going to fold it in half and crease it really well. And then I'm going to apply a generous amount of adhesive on one side. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to apply it right above, about 1/8 of an inch above that circle, that half circle, and then I'm going to make sure that it's straight across, or as best as possible. Make sure I rub that down really well. That's my little beak. Now for my eyes, I like to assemble those before I put them on my Angry Bird. So I'm going to put adhesive on the back side of my little black circles, and then I like to make them not quite in the center. I put them towards the lower portion because I think it makes the bird a little more expressive. But you can experiment with which look you like. And I'm going to put adhesive on the back of those. And I'm going to position them just above my beak. Now I want just a tad of space between the eyes. I don't want them to exactly touch, but I want them to be very close together. And then the only thing I have left to do is to put on those eyebrows. And this is really what makes our Angry Bird look angry. So again, I'm going to take adhesive and put it on each of these little black eyebrows. And I'm going to angle them so that he looks very angry. And then I'm going to kind of fiddle with them to make them so that they look somewhat symmetrical. Not completely. There we go. And that's all there is to it. There we have our Angry Bird. Here's my original. And again, I'll bring back my other two. I have the yellow bird and the pig. If you have any questions about this project, please email me at craftingforfun@gmail.com, or you can always check out my blog, craftingforfun.blogspot.com, for additional craft ideas. Hope you enjoyed today's project.